And welcome on in to the Third Round Reversal Fantasy Football Podcast. Brett Malman here with you along with Zach Malman. Zach, how you doing?
I'm doing all right, Brett. We're in a good stretch right now. Obviously, some big news that we got this past week. So let's get into it.
Yep, excited to break down some of the big contracts that came out this week, and we're right into it with OTAs. And so, kind of a bit of news, and holdouts here and there, but we'll obviously see what happens as training camps open in about a month and a half from now. Beware, I would say, of what you do read from OTAs, because I think this is a little bit of the silly season, and we start to see a lot of the headlines come out, for certain guys, in favor of certain guys, whether it's to, get their value up to be traded, or, sort of hype them up. And it's this tactic we've seen in the last couple of years of the GMs trying to hype their guys up, the coaches trying to hype their guys up by giving them some love in the press conferences. And so I think I say, take it with a grain of salt, because obviously it's a little bit different than it might be in a month and a half from right now. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. Obviously, there's some news coming out every single day, and there's a lot to really look at. I feel like, yeah, you do have to be careful. There's a lot of big news that could come out, and I feel like in the dynasty perspective, people like jump to make moves a little bit earlier just because they're a little bit worried about something. And we're kind of two people that kind of sit back and enjoy this offseason, see what's going on and how to kind of work around that. But I do see people like jumping ahead and saying, oh no, I got to do this. And obviously, I mean, we see these contract extensions, and there's some people now on the other side who are saying, damn, why did I do that? So, I mean, you got to be patient, especially during the off season, because, I mean, not as much news is coming up, bro.
Yeah, I would argue that OTAs is probably a time where you can almost take advantage of some of the opportunities that may come about from panic teams. I know that last year I was able to go out and, grab a guy like Jonathan Taylor on my team, as obviously he's going through some contract disputes, and, was able to fish him away. Jameson Williams, and there was a lot of talk that he might not be ready for the season, was able to fish him away. And so, it happens a lot. I think that it hasn't happened yet in our league, but I'm sort of kind of waiting for that period where the first trade goes down. I think that in our league, we sort of had one trade go down, and then all of a sudden there was like 6 of them in the next couple of days. And so, you sort of hit that avalanche, and I think that sort of varies by league. But yeah, it's sort of the time where, again, be patient, but obviously keep your eyes open and across the league that goes. And if there is a situation that you see where a team be panicking on, let's say, a Dallas Cowboy who's waiting for a contract, we obviously saw a lot of news about CeeDee Lamb and the potential to hold out, and all these things like that. If there is a guy who is out there in your league who is panicked about CeeDee Lamb, then I would try to obviously make an offer on that, because that guy is going to be the number one receiver, if not a top 3 receiver, as we spoke about last week a little bit. But let's start breaking down some of the big news that did come out. Before that, please subscribe to us on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. Give us the thumbs up, and make sure that you go check out some of our other episodes. We previewed the AFC East and the NFC East over the last couple of weeks, and some draft stuff prior to that, some rookie breakdowns, and we went by position and then breaking down where they actually landed. So make sure you go check those out. Zach, let's start out with these 2 big guys. We'll start out at running back right now. When you think fantasy football, though, you do think of Justin Jefferson and Christian McCaffrey, both of which sign extensions. Let's start out with Christian McCaffrey, who signs this pretty big deal. It's a 2-year extension on top of his 2-year deal that he already has, but it's going to average him $19 million a year. Pretty big raise for the running back position, at least. Kind of setting the standard of here's where the market's going to be. I think that McCaffrey obviously is the top running back in the league, and it's pretty well known across the league that he was going to get the most money. Sure enough, the market has been set. I don't see any of these running backs coming over him for the time being. Maybe one of these rookies, Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, like in a couple of years when those contracts start to run out, like maybe they go on top of McCaffrey. But I think that it's nice for the market to sort of settle on a higher number, so at least some of these lesser guys will be able to get paid a bit more than what they were making. And for me, I think this is just really good news for McCaffrey owner in Dynasty, because I think they added 2 more years on top of it. And I think that he's going to play this out as long as he can stay healthy, which obviously has been his kind of Achilles heel, excuse the pun.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think what it really did, this contract, was set the market. I mean, obviously we've seen contract extensions in the last couple of years. Obviously some of the big ones, Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley this offseason, Josh Jacobs as well. I think like you look at those guys and it's just, you see the difference between them and a contract that McCaffrey got. And I mean, rightfully so. Christian McCaffrey's, he's the number one guy. He's the number one running back in football. Everybody knows that. Like there's nothing new here. I feel like what it did though is you saw a raise for some of those other players, and Christian McCaffrey got that raise as well. I think the pay increase is big time for him. It all comes down to health. You said it. I mean, that's the big thing with McCaffrey. Luckily, last season, a fully healthy season where, I mean, touchdown after touchdown. It's not going to be like that again. We're going to obviously have our division preview on the West pretty soon, but like, I mean, it's not going to be the picture perfect year that it was, I don't think, for Christian McCaffrey like it was last year. I think there's going to be a little bit here and there that, I mean, can maybe drop his value, but not too much, because I feel like he's still the number one guy. And yes, it all depends on health, but he's proven that in the last couple of years he could stay healthy. So I think that's big time for him. But like I said, it comes down to that. And if he is healthy, there's no doubt he's worth more than every single running back.
Yeah, I think that again, we talk about like guys sitting out and guys not sitting out. Last week he sat out. A lot of people kind of noticed that, and obviously it's like optional voluntary practices that are happening. Returned right to the practice field on Tuesday, and basically worked with the team the rest of the week. And so again, that's the sort of thing that we're talking about. And we go right to the next guy here, and there were a lot of rumors about him over the last little while. What will he do? He ended up signing a 4-year extension, and just a few weeks ago, he was spotted in New Jersey in Florham Park, not at the Jets facility, but also, listen, when the owners live around the country, I think that a lot of people don't realize where they live. And so Jefferson's seen in New Jersey. All of a sudden, everybody's like up in arms. Oh my God, is he going to the Jets? Like, it never was going to be that. They were always going to pay Justin Jefferson. Signs a huge mega deal, $140 million, 4 years, $110 million of that is guaranteed. He is the number one guy. He got quarterback money, pretty much. I mean, what can we say about this guy that we haven't said already? He is the number one receiver, without a doubt. And obviously the big question now comes to his quarterback situation, which we'll break down in just a minute. But as far as it goes for the Jefferson owner out there who was a little scared about the potential of him leaving Minnesota, potential that he ends up in a committee potentially and ends up getting that full target share that he had prior, and he's sort of a 1-2 punch with somebody. Like, all of that goes away right now. I think that being in Minnesota, he's going to continue to be the number one guy and get the share of targets that he has. I think we've started to see Jordan Addison come into his own a little bit. So I think he takes a step forward this year, but I don't think that entails taking away targets from just Jefferson. I think it really comes from, taking away targets from the third receiver, the fourth receiver, and that's work. But I don't really see Justin Jefferson shying away from getting his target share and honing in on the rookie quarterback he's about to work with.
Yeah, I mean, it all comes down to the chemistry that he's going to have with McCarthy. If McCarthy starts right away, or if it's Sam Darnold for a couple games, I mean, it just comes down to that. We obviously both of us pushed Jefferson down a little bit in our rankings at wide receiver. We just feel like situations elsewhere could benefit those different players and put them ahead of a guy like Jefferson who's still trying to figure out that quarterback situation. We're kind of picking guys in Lamb as well as Tyreek Hill, who, I mean, we know that their quarterback is going to get them the ball, and obviously we know who their quarterback is, so that's a big thing. But as far as the contract goes, this is not surprising. I mean, this guy deserved every single penny of what he got, the 140 million, and then I mean 110 guaranteed. No player comes even close to that, Brett, in terms of guaranteed money at wide receiver. The next best is AJ Brown at 84 million. So I mean, it tells you all you need to know, but nothing surprising here. This guy deserved all of that money. He's averaging, I mean, $35 million a year. That's big time. So we knew he'd be the highest paid wide receiver because, I mean, there's an argument that he's number one. I'd put him at number one in all of football. So very interesting, but really not a surprise here.
All right, so let's just jump right into a preview and preview the rest of his team here. Let's start out with the Minnesota Vikings. Zach, give us your take there.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the big question is quarterback, and in terms of fantasy, it's kind of weird to not go into the season saying, "Oh, all right, the Minnesota Vikings, let's go with their quarterback." I mean, because Kirk Cousins was, although there was some ifs, ands, or buts, I think he was pretty reliable when he was at quarterback in Minnesota. So definitely a little weird going into the season without Kirk. Because there's not somebody you really trust here in the quarterback rankings. I would say McCarthy's in the 20s. Maybe you take a late round flyer on him and take a shot on him, but I don't think he's going to bring that fantasy production right away into the NFL. I think he needs to. I think he really needs a little bit of time to learn. I'm not somebody that was really high on McCarthy coming into the draft. I felt like, because of the situation he had at Michigan, I felt like he was kind of set in stone of what he was going to do. And a lot of guys are system quarterbacks. I think this system works very well for McCarthy. It's just about now bringing those skills that he had in college into the NFL. And that's kind of a waiting game, in my opinion. I think, like I said, though, McCarthy is not on really a fantasy radar. Yeah, you could take a late round flyer on him. In Dynasty, he's a first round pick, definitely in Dynasty drafts. So I would probably say middle of the first round, people will be looking at him, maybe even a little bit higher because of the situation he got drafted into. I would say at running back, it's quite interesting, Brett, because Aaron Jones comes in. There's not much there except for a guy like Ty Chandler who's behind him. Some people will say, "Oh, well, Ty Chandler played so well." I feel like this is Aaron Jones's backfield, and Ty Chandler is going to get his carries in there because, from what we've seen, Brett, Aaron Jones has not been that healthy. Although it's been pretty solid fantasy production, like he's had some injury struggles in the last couple of years, and it's kind of something to watch out for. I wouldn't be surprised if he missed like a couple of games this season. But if you're hoping as an Aaron Jones owner that doesn't happen, and he kind of escapes a lot of those guys, but he does have Chandler behind him. That is a big time handcuff. I will say that right away, like a huge handcuff to watch out for. We always talked about Alex Madison behind Dalvin Cook. Like, this is as big as it gets in terms of Ty Chandler behind Aaron Jones because of what Ty Chandler was able to do in this offense last season. And of course, when you look at the wide receivers, yeah, Jefferson's going to be a little bit lower this season because of the quarterback situation. Once we get some more news, I feel like, Brett, if they say, "Oh, McCarthy's starting week 1," I feel like you can kind of shift it around a little bit more, because I feel like that chemistry is just going to come in. It's not going to be like, oh, Sam Darnold starting, we're not going to be throwing Justin Jefferson to the top. I feel like you got to kind of have to see, and it's more of a waiting game where you're going to draft Jefferson in terms of those wide receivers. But you mentioned Jordan Addison. I think a big jump for him. I even think a pretty solid jump for Jefferson, because the big guy missing is TJ Hawkinson, and that's a massive target in this offense. We don't know when he'll be back. I would assume maybe mid to late season. Of course, he got injured towards the end of last year, which obviously hurt his chances of coming back early this year. That's a big question mark. I feel like they both take a jump with Addison and Jefferson, plus KJ Osborne's out the door as well. So that was another guy that got targets. So with the loss of Osborne, Hawkinson out, I think those two wide receivers, definitely two guys to watch out for. I'd probably put Addison maybe in the mid 30s. I would probably say that's a good range in redraft rankings.
Yeah, I think it's fair. I think that, as far as Addison goes, like I just said a few minutes ago, like I think the best thing for him was that KJ Osborne's not there, because I think that he's going to basically figure out getting those targets, and they'll keep Jefferson at his share and make sure that he gets his worth. But to have that opportunity to become the number 2 receiver, and kind of separate yourself from the rest of the pack, I think that it's a big opportunity ahead for Addison. And so, yeah, I think I agree with you. Probably right there in the mid 30s, which lines him up right in like that wide receiver 3 flex range, depending on your league. And so, yeah, I mean, it's kind of just going to come down to that and whether he can go up or down. Hawkinson, for me, I'm probably staying away from him unless the opportunity strikes and he just kind of slips in a lot of drafts by a lot of panicked people. But I think that the only way I would take him is if there's so much value that comes to me early in the draft that he kind of just slips and he's there round 8, 9, and you feel comfortable taking a tight end there. Listen, as far as Hawkinson's timetable goes, right now he says that there is no table yet. And so he's just taking it day by day, week by week was the quote. And so, it's a little scary, but if you're waiting on tight end and you're waiting, and then, there's the opportunity to take Hawkinson there, I couldn't shy away from that. Aaron Jones, listen, I agree with you. I think Aaron Jones, it is going to be his backfield. That said, I think Ty Chandler is a very good late round flyer to be able to take, to have on the end of your bench. If you want to handcuff him to Aaron Jones and take both of them, I'd be comfortable with that as well, because there is the unknown. But I think this is going to be Aaron Jones's backfield. I think that Minnesota watched Aaron Jones run all over them all the time for the last bunch of years. Now they have him on their side. And so, you could be sure that they're going to be running him a lot, especially in that Green Bay game or the 2 Green Bay games, if they get the opportunity to. So for me, he's probably right now running back 2, probably mid-tier running back 2. And we'll see where it goes from there as far as the workload. Like you said at the top, I think that J.J. McCarthy's probably not a fantasy impact this year. If he is, he's a very, very low-end super flex. And sort of my caution would be, if you have a J.J. McCarthy in a dynasty, try to get some sort of guy to be your number 2 guy. I know that's a little hard, but, if you're sort of getting a stopgap guy, I think that that's probably the opportunity. If you're trying to compete, I wouldn't exactly rely on J.J. McCarthy to give you a boatload of points in your super flex spot right away. I think it's going to take some time to settle. I also think that they're kind of going to have to figure out how to use J.J. McCarthy. I'm not sure that they're going to use him exactly how he was used in college. I'm not sure that they're going to run him the way that they ran Josh Dobbs, and it was like that running style quarterback. I don't know that that's going to help them, just because we saw how much that failed. That system failed, and so yeah, they'll obviously throw him in motion, and he'll be able to do more than Kirk Cousins sitting in the pocket, but I think there's going to be some sort of happy medium. I don't know that he's just going to be a running quarterback. I don't see that being a thing. I also do see Sam Darnold come in early in the season, maybe gets a week or 2 before they turn it over to JJ. But listen, I think the opportunity is in front for the kid, and we talked about it a couple weeks ago. I think that he is a pretty smart dynasty pick because of the weapons that he has around him, the weapons that are now obviously in place for multiple years ahead. And so I think that is a pretty good, probably there in the middle of the first round from a rookie standpoint. And the last thing I'll say is don't look at any of the rest of that running back room, because I'm not sure that, listen, there's the talk of Cam Akers potentially coming back. There's the talk of Myles Gaskin and all of that. Dwayne McBride got a lot of hype over the last week or so. I'm ignoring it completely. I think that if you are going after a handcuff, it's Ty Chandler, because he did prove himself at the end of last year. And so that to me is a late round flyer. Again, it's a guy that we could be talking about pretty early in the season if we start to see a potential waiver option there.
Yeah, definitely agree on all fronts, Brett. And Minnesota's situation, it's more of, all right, let's develop the quarterback and kind of see where it goes. I think it's going to be a interesting season for the Vikings. They also have a really tough strength of schedule this year, so it's kind of, all right, kind of see where you go. They're past the Kirk Cousins era. It didn't get them too far. I think they're trying now to develop this young quarterback and develop this young offense. They got a lot of talent there and could be a real good team in the future.
All right, so let's go to Lambeau Field right now as we break down the Green Bay Packers, Zach. And we talked about them at length a couple weeks ago in the running back situation with Josh Jacobs and Marshawn Lloyd. How do you see them faring this year in redraft and then also in Dynasty?
Yeah, when you look at Josh Jacobs, he's probably in that RB2 range. I think some people would say, oh, that's way too low. There's a lot of questions right now, Brett. And there's also a lot of players that I see on other teams in just way better situations. Yes, that can go. You could take that either way. I think there's just a lot of names at running back that I'd put ahead of Josh Jacobs heading into this year. That's just the reality. And I think he's probably a high-end RB2, but I don't think much higher than that. Some people would be like, oh, well, he did all that work in Vegas. Well, he's got a lot of other guys around him now in this Green Bay offense. You could say what you want about what he had in Vegas. I think, yeah, you look at Devontae, and after that, you don't really say much. Josh Jacobs was that offense for a couple of years and led the league in rushing and did all that great stuff in Vegas. But now he's in an offense where there's a lot going on. They have a lot of weapons, and it's just this offense is ready to roll with the ball in Jordan Love's hands. And I think that's the biggest thing. So I'd put Jacobs as a RB2. In terms of Lloyd, I'm not high on him just yet. I know you're a little bit higher on him than I am. I still think Dillon is the backup right now until Lloyd beats him out because Dillon's been in there so long. Plus, he's just a big body there, and they're going to give him those goal line touches and the short down touches in that offense. I still think A.J. Dillon gets those touches. They wouldn't have re-signed him if they didn't believe that. That's my opinion on it. I think when you look at Dillon, yes, he could be a handcuff, but I kind of just go every which way on this Green Bay offense because, yeah, Lloyd could end up getting those touches if Jacobs for some reason goes down. I would be very iffy on it because there's two guys there right behind him who I'd put them pretty close to each other, even though I'd give Dillon the edge. I do think those guys are pretty close, and it's just comes down to who can win the battle for the second running back spot. So, but Jacobs is an RB2 high end, like I said. In terms of Jordan Love, Brett, this is a guy I'm looking at. I really like him this year because of there's that stretch behind those top quarterbacks where there's really solid quarterbacks right there in that 8, 9, 10, 11 range that I could see a lot of people waiting on a quarterback this year because there are so many guys right there. And Jordan Love is in that mix. I think he had a great season last year, and I think this offense takes another jump with the weapons that he got. Plus, he got Josh Jacobs and everything about it. I do think he's a guy to watch out for because I think the fantasy impact could be huge. And some people may have him as their QB1 in dynasty and in redraft. Like, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I think he's a really talented quarterback with a lot of weapons around him that can really give him a big jump this year. The one thing I'll say now in terms of these weapons, and it's something that we don't like at all as fantasy owners, there are just so many, Brett. There's so many guys, and you could go every which way on. Oh well, this guy had a great season last year. That guy had a great season last. There's 4 guys, 5 guys that I say, yeah, that would be a solid pick in this offense. I would say that's the one thing giving Josh Jacobs an advantage because he's the top Green Bay guy in terms of those weapons that you would go for. Obviously, it's a different position at running back, but I feel like Watson and Reed and Dobbs, you're not going to put them in the top 30 because I feel like they're just going to take targets and touches away from each other. I would say Reed is the top guy, in my opinion, even though Watson had his injury struggles and some may argue. I think Reed is the top guy from what they showed last year based on his ability in fantasy, running and passing. He does a lot of work on the ground as well. They use him on end arounds a lot. I feel like he could be a real star this year, just like he was last year. And then finally at the tight end position, I don't see either of these guys like taking an edge over the other. They're both very, very good in Luke Musgrave as well as Tucker Kraft. I feel like Musgrave may be the number 1 guy, but I wouldn't put them on the fantasy radar, Brett, in terms of redraft. Dynasty, you can kind of go which way you want. But in redraft, I think because there are 2 guys, it just makes it difficult with this packed tight end class that we have here in fantasy. I wouldn't put them in the ranking.
I agree. I think that, again, with Musgrave and with Kraft, like you said, neck and neck, probably off the radar for me. It really just comes down to dynasty, and you're really right now using them as a stash because I don't know that you're really playing so much. And so it's kind of just going to come down to who beats out the other, and that's how you'll figure out what their value is from a dynasty standpoint. As far as the receivers go, I think you kind of nailed it. It's like Reed or Watson. They kind of go neck and neck with me. And I could kind of see them going very, very close to each other in the draft, maybe even the same round. And so for me, yeah, I kind of go back and forth on them too. I don't really know that I have one over the other. They both sort of bring different things, and yet they bring the same thing. They can get down the field quick. They can catch the ball. And so I think that, people are going to say Reed because Watson had his injuries last year. And so I don't disagree with that. I also think that the talent of Christian Watson can't be shied away from. Dontavian Wicks, I think, is being the forgotten man because of these 3 guys. I think that it's a guy that you can probably add for peanuts in Dynasty, and stash him just at the end of the bench. And if he goes off, then you have him and you didn't pay anything for him. I've seen that he's out there in a ton of Dynasty leagues, just even on waivers now, because of the amount of weapons that Green Bay has. It is a pretty smart pickup. The running back room is kind of interesting for me because, listen, I think that Josh Jacobs has the opportunity to be a running back 1. I don't know that he is a running back 1. I think he's a very high running back 2. And that's sort of where I peg him. So that's probably like round 4, I would say, or so in a lot of these drafts, back into round 3, even depending on, how your league favors running backs. But yeah, I agree with you. I think that there's a lot of guys that are in better situations, and Marshawn Lloyd is a good option behind him, as is AJ Dillon, a familiar face that they do like between the tackles, and obviously they brought him back and got rid of Aaron Jones, and so I think that the three of them will each play their own little role within this offense this year. I think that for me, I'm kind of listen. I understand that you say that I'm higher on Marshawn Lloyd, but it really just comes down to if Josh Jacobs is out, then I think that Marshawn Lloyd will get the bulk carry over AJ Dillon. I think that the trust issues that they did have with AJ Dillon last year sort of hinted at that. Where we saw Patrick Taylor come in a whole bunch, and Emmanuel Wilson came in as well, and so I think that Marshawn Lloyd does have the potential. I also think from a dynasty option, there is a little bit of intrigue just knowing the Josh Jacobs contract situation. He has obviously signed a pretty lucrative 4-year deal. However, what a lot of people don't realize is there's an opt-out after the first year. And so there is the potential that if he doesn't have a good year, well, then it's Marshawn Lloyd and he's going to be the guy. And so it is an intriguing option, but obviously if you are picking Marshawn Lloyd, then you're kind of sacrificing a bench spot, I would say, in your dynasty because you're probably not playing him this year. And he's going to just sit on your bench the entire season with the potential that he ends up as an option for next year. And so you're sort of just sacrificing a roster spot with the hopes that Josh Jacobs does not get renewed or that the Packers are sort of out of it towards the end of the season and they kind of give the rookie some run here. And so, yeah, there's a little bit of risk there. So it's not that I'm high on Marshawn Lloyd. I would just say that, he is a potential option where a lot of people don't really see him as an option. As far as Jordan Love goes, I 1,000% agree with you that there's going to be a ton of people that are going to just wait on quarterback and value draft and draft, the guys who fall to them and then just let the quarterback fall where it is and then grab him pretty late. I think that there is the opportunity that you can grab Jordan Love in the 8th round, the 9th round, right around the same time you can get either of his top 2 receivers. I think that Jordan will be there right in that same range. And yeah, I think that it's a good option. And obviously we saw it down the stretch of Jordan Love being able to use his legs in addition to his arm. And, we obviously saw him torch a pretty good team in the playoffs. And so I think that, Love is a good option. I think that, is he going to finish as a top 5 quarterback? I don't know about that, but I do see him finishing as a top 10 quarterback. And he'll be in that 6 to 10 range. I could totally see that happening, especially if he uses his legs.
Yeah, 1,000%. We always talk about draft strategy and maybe drafting a quarterback a little bit later. Then you grab more position players. So the difference between him and the top quarterback is really not a lot because you end up getting a really solid position player in those 5, 6, 7, 7th round where somebody may be drafting one of those top quarterbacks, Brett.
All right, let's jump over to a team that has gone through quite the change over the last little while here, past couple months, the Chicago Bears. Zach, obviously, new quarterback, new running back, some new receivers, even a new tight end. Let's break them all down. What are your thoughts here on the Chicago Bears?
So, Brett, I mean, there's a lot here. Obviously, they really redid this offense to the max. Obviously, they go a different way on almost every single position. They got a lead guy who's in charge now for each position. The one they kept right now is DJ Moore at wide receiver. I'll start there because there's a lot of question marks on DJ Moore and now Keenan Allen, who they brought in this offseason. And some people may be saying, well, Keenan Allen, he's unbelievable. I mean, a ridiculous fantasy wide receiver. I don't believe we'll be seeing that Keenan Allen a lot this year. I do think Caleb Williams, although everybody's like, oh, well, he's so ready. And the Bears are the team to say that right now. He's so ready for the NFL and everything about it. Give him a year. I think he definitely needs to learn. It's a lot different than the college game for a quarterback like him who was a lot on the run, and there's a lot of ability there, no doubt about it. But I do think they need a year to really settle him in, and get going in the NFL, because it's nothing like what he faced at USC or Oklahoma in his college years. I feel like when we start with Keenan Allen, like I would say he's a wide receiver 3. I think he's like a flex wide receiver. And that's crazy to say about Keenan Allen, the target machine that he is and everything about it. It's just not the same this year, because I think DJ Moore is the top guy. The speed he brings, plus he's going to get the targets in this offense, I believe. With Caleb Williams, I feel like that's going to be, that partnership is going to be the top one here. And yes, Keenan Allen is going to get his targets, but I don't think it's going to be as many as DJ Moore. And then fantasy wise, that's going to really boost up Moore's value. I would say Moore's a wide receiver 2. Probably like a little bit of wide receiver 1 upside, but not too much because of how many weapons they have there. But definitely somebody that a lot of teams are going to be looking for, a lot of fantasy owners are going to be looking for, is DJ Moore, because of that partnership that I think he's going to build with Caleb Williams. In terms of Rome Odunze, I don't think this is the year. Obviously, in Dynasty, he's a first rounder. You're drafting him in your rookie drafts. But this, because of Keenan Allen and DJ Moore in front of him, he's not going to get the same amount of targets that owners would have liked. I definitely see a little bit of a down year for Rome Odunze, and then it picks up once a guy like Keenan Allen is out the door. In terms of running back, DeAndre Swift, people can kind of go back and forth on this, because everybody looks at Caleb Williams and they say, oh, well, the rushing ability that he has. Yes, but I feel like with a rookie quarterback, I feel like it would be a little bit smart, Brett, to rely on a running back, an experienced running back right next to him. That could be one of the reasons. It could also be a reason that he has Khalil Herbert and Roschon Johnson behind him. So he may not be getting all the touches like he did, even though he was in a crowded backfield, in Philly last year. He got the bulk of the touches. I would put him in the 20s range, outside the top 20, just because there's the question marks of the running quarterback plus the guys behind him. I still think he's a solid option, a flex option. He's the number 1 running back in my mind, but obviously there's a lot of question marks there. Caleb Williams, in terms of redraft, he's a QB2. I'm not somebody that's drafting him. I know people are going to be like, oh my God, I got to draft the number 1 pick. I'm not one of those people. I don't think it's going to be that fantastic of a year. He's going to go off right away. No, I don't believe it. He is going to get some solid points, but maybe when one of those top guys is on a bye week. And then at tight end, little crowded now, Cole Kmet plus Gerald Everett. I think Cole Kmet's outside the top 10, different from where it's been in the past, where they said, all right, well, he's the only tight end. Because Gerald Everett's there, I think it pushes him outside the top 10. He's a tight end 2 in my mind.
Yeah, I just think that, knowing Bill Williams, how he sort of operated at USC, I can actually see Gerald Everett becoming a favorite red zone target the same way that he's sort of been like that his entire career. I think that Gerald Everett will vulture a lot of touchdowns out of that tight end core. And so I agree. I think that Cole Kmet's probably a type 2 for me until further notice. As far as Caleb goes, listen, I think that he's probably a super flex option for me. Probably a higher end super flex option at that, because I do think that they are going to use him with his legs, and that will hurt DeAndre Swift a bit, like you said. I think that, they will obviously work to Caleb's strengths. I think that they've sort of done that, and obviously they brought the weapons all in, and they sort of had the planning in place of what they wanted to do as far as the quarterback situation. It seemed like from the very start, Caleb Williams was going to be the pick without a doubt. There wasn't really any sort of debate of which quarterback they were going to take at the top of the draft. It seemed to always be Caleb from the second that they got that pick. And so I think he'll be successful there. I think that, it's, again, not going to be this top tier of the season, but I think that it's worthy enough that he is a super flex option for me. Swift, like you said, he's probably running back 2 for me. Roschon Johnson, I think, actually has the opportunity now to take a step forward and become the number 2 over Khalil Herbert. But I think that they're pretty neck and neck at the moment, and then probably off the radar for me completely. This wide receiver core is kind of interesting to me because, yes, DJ Moore is that top guy. It's really that second guy that really is the big question mark for me between Keenan Allen and Rome Odunze, because I think that we've seen the lowest of Keenan Allen. And honestly, hot take here. This is your incoming hot take. I think Odunze actually is going to score more fantasy points this year than Keenan Allen. I don't know if it's going to come down to injury or situation, but I just think that the way that they utilize DJ Moore is very similar to how Keenan Allen has been utilized pretty much his entire career with LA. And so I think Odunze brings something different, that they'll be able to take some deep shots. And I think that Caleb's going to be looking for him. Listen, I think Caleb was really excited about getting him. And so, yeah, there's my hot take. I think that Odunze is going to outscore Keenan Allen. I think that Odunze is a pretty good sleeper option that you could probably get later on in your fantasy draft. How does that for a hot take?
That's a hot take, and I'm going to take the opposite side.
Yeah, listen, it's fair. I get it, because Keenan Allen has been pretty reliable, and we have seen, just as much as we've seen the lows, we've also seen the highs of Keenan Allen, and he was reliable. But I just think that we're sort of turning a corner a little bit here. Obviously, the Chargers did see that as well, and otherwise they sort of would have kept him, plain and simple. They would have kept him at the number that he was worth there. Instead, they trade him to a team that's basically holding his cap hit on a 1-year deal. I just think that there is the opportunity he's not going to be there next year, and they sort of know that. And so I just think that they're really going to try to push Rome Odunze on Caleb Moore. And I think that, honestly, Caleb is going to accept it. Like I said, I think he's very excited about that. And obviously a fellow rookie coming in, I think there's the opportunity that a lot of big plays are made there.
All right, our third round reversal bet is in session. Keenan Allen more than Rome Odunze. You have Rome Odunze more than Keenan Allen. So I would say, just quickly, Keenan Allen has just been a vacuum in terms of targets in his time in LA. Even though it's a different situation, I don't know why they would go away from that strength that Keenan Allen has. They have a young quarterback, and they're going to need some weapons for him because he likes to throw the ball. If you know anything about Caleb Williams, he definitely likes to throw it. So I feel like when it comes to, yes, Moore does a lot of the things that Allen does, but Moore also goes deep. So I feel like Allen, it's more of it's short game in terms of that, and short slant routes and curls and everything like that. I feel like Keenan Allen fits that role. The question, I think the big question is who's going to be the slot guy, because we've seen DJ Moore in the slot. We've seen Keenan Allen in the slot. We've also seen them both outside. I would probably say Allen's the slot guy because of the ability that Moore has on the outside to go deep against those corners. And that's even why I give Moore the edge in terms of being the top wide receiver, because of that ability to go deep. That's something that we haven't seen too much from Allen in the last couple of years as he's gotten older, rightfully so. So I think that's something to definitely look out for. But a lot of people are going to be going on Chicago this year, and could they make the playoffs? Could they be there? Take a rest, give it a year, and then I think they're ready to roll. I would say my prediction there on Chicago right now, Brett.
I agree with everything you just said. I think that Keenan Allen will be the slot guy. I think that that's, to me, the reason why I put Rome where I put him. And I just think that opportunity to go deep, and you just said it, like the opportunity to go deep, like he brings that same sort of firepower that we saw with DJ Moore. That game that he went off, like he was always open downfield for Michael Penix, and that's where I really see him sort of separating himself. And so, yeah, I think it'll be a hot take, and we'll follow it throughout the season, though. We'll have to start writing these down. But that's for sure going to be one. So let's go right now to the final team here. It's the Detroit Lions. Zach, I mean, obviously a huge year that they had last year, and they kind of returned the exact same group that they had last year. Not really any additions. Let's just sort of break down what your thoughts are as far as the Lions go. Obviously, they signed Jared Goff to an extension, and Amon-Ra as well, and Jameson Williams seems to be a little healthier than he was, obviously, at the end of last year.
Yeah, I mean, Brett, this could be. I was talking about it last week in the preview for this show, and I feel like this is an offense that could be top of the list in my mind for like excited to watch offenses this year in terms of fantasy, and go get a lot of those guys in this offense, because I mean, everything about last year was how great this offense was down the stretch, and they have so many guys to look at. I'll start at the running back position. Why not? Because Jahmyr Gibbs, I expect the step up even more this year. We kind of saw once Montgomery, I think he went down midway through the season. He had a injury stretch of like a couple of games, and Gibbs did not hand it back. He just took it and ran with it. And then obviously into the playoffs, and Gibbs was the lead guy for Detroit. I feel like we're going to see a little bit of the same here in terms of Gibbs is the lead guy, but Montgomery, like, he's not out of the equation. He's still going to get those touches. I think they're still going to be giving him those touchdowns. Yes, Gibbs will get some and get more than he did last year, but Montgomery will definitely be getting goal line touches and those short yardage touches. He definitely will be, because I don't think they're going to want to put Gibbs in too many of those situations. Obviously, he's still a young running back, and he's at his best when it comes to out in space and just breaking tackles and getting loose down the sideline. I feel like that's the big thing for Jahmyr Gibbs. He takes a massive step up here. Top 10 running back, upside of top 5. I wouldn't put him in the top 5 just yet, because it's pretty hard to argue with the top 5 that we have right now. Obviously, you put Saquon in there, Taylor's in there, and then the top 3 with McCaffrey, Hall, and Bijan. Sorry to the Jahmyr Gibbs, but I can't put you ahead of any of those guys. That's just the reality. But he's right there. I think he's definitely in the top 10. A guy I feel like, Brett, who's going to be going on the swing of the first and second round in redraft. He's right there, and why not? People are going to see the value in it. People are going to see the value in this offense. So why not go for it? In terms of wide receiver, yeah, Amon-Ra is going to be a monster this year once again. They gave him the contract extension, and he's going to soar. He's in the top 5. The argument right now, actually, Brett, is whether somebody would take Jefferson or Amon-Ra. I mean, you kind of go back and forth between those two guys in the rankings. Of course, the top guys with Lamb, Tyreek, and Jamar Chase, most people have. Amon-Ra or Justin Jefferson. You can kind of go which way you want. I'd take Amon-Ra because of the offense and because of how much they're rolling in this offense right now. Plus, they bring back Ben Johnson, the play caller. That's a massive thing as well that people don't realize. Like, they are still going. Exact offense from last year. Goff is a quarterback too, once again, but a really solid super flex option this year. But in terms of redraft, he's a QB2. I wouldn't put him anywhere close to QB1 range. And then my guy, Sam Laporta. I think he's right there at the top. A lot of people will go back and forth between him and Kelsey. I'm a Laporta guy, so I'm biased, Brett. I put him as number 1 because until he proves me wrong, until he maybe goes down or something, hopefully not, like, he is the number 1 guy, and he's going to get all those targets. So definitely something To look at, I think he's really in that range of when you talk about like the Kelsey and Andrews years of like second and third rounds. Like there's going to be some people that are going after Sam Laporta pretty early because of the target share he gets and what he brings to the table. You definitely have more talk on your guy Jameson Williams, so I'll let you get into that as well.
Yeah, I actually was going to start with Jameson Williams, believe it or not. I think that, listen, as far as it goes, it's a make or break year for JMO. It's his third year, and he obviously, in his first year, was coming off the ACL surgery. Then last year, he gets into some gambling stuff, and they rule him ineligible. Then they rule him eligible. He had an ankle injury early in the year, so he didn't exactly get a training camp either. And so I think that, as far as Jameson Williams' value goes, in a redraft standpoint, I would say that he's probably going in round 10, round 11, and, that sort of range that we saw some of those, like, rookie receivers last year coming in. We're going, the Smith and Jigbas and Jordan Addisons of the world. They were going right in that range. I think that that's sort of where I would put him. I don't think that he's going to have this massive year because I really think that Amon-Ra and Sam Laporta are going to be the number 1 and number 2 receivers, and I don't really see Jameson eating too much into that unless one of them obviously goes down with injury. There'll be some big plays that J-Mo makes. I think, to me, I laughed a little bit when I saw the headline come out just a couple days ago that he's going to play this huge mega role in the offense. And to me, I just laughed because I was like, how is he going to play? Who's he taking this big mega role away from? Is he taking it from Gibbs or Montgomery or Amon-Ra or, Sam Laporta? I don't think he's taking it from any of them. So that automatically makes him the 5th option. And so I don't see the upside so much. I actually traded for him about a year ago, and now I've flipped him. Listen, I flipped him for Aaron Rodgers, believe it or not, a deal to sort of shore up my quarterbacks in our Superflex dynasty. And I'm comfortable with that because I think that it was the right time for JMO to go because I don't see the opportunity for him to overtake one of those 4 guys in that offense. And so therefore I don't know that he's going to succeed at the level that fantasy owners are hoping for if he is in Detroit. And if he's not in Detroit, then we can have another conversation about it another day. He's a very talented player. I just don't really see the upside there. But, when that headline came out the other day, I was like, well, if I still had him on my team, I'd be shopping him around right now. And that's honestly my recommendation to a lot of the dynasty owners out there that are a little panicked on Jameson Williams. And, listen, I see it all the time online on Reddit, especially where they kind of just always are talking about Jameson Williams and they're always so high on Jameson Williams. I don't understand it. And maybe it's just wishful thinking on a lot of people's part, but to me, this is the time to really go out and try to shop him, especially with these headlines coming out. And it's the silly season where you're sort of seeing a lot of those, hype pieces about specific players. I'm a little unsure about that. As far as the receiver and that goes, it's Amon-Ra, and obviously he's a top 5 guy. He just is. He's a top 5 guy. I think that I do hold him over Jefferson. And it really just comes down to that play action pass that nobody can seem to stop. I talk about it ad nauseum where they sort of just run it. And then the defense thinks you're going to run it again. And he hits him with that action. It totally fakes out every defender. Jared Goff is so good at play action. Draws the linebacker in and he sort of just floats it over the top to Amon-Ra. Right over the middle. Every single time he's wide open. I don't know. That play just works so often. And, the yards after catch to me are what really cements Amon-Ra's status as one of those top 5 guys just from the amount of points he gets. And so, he's a top 5 guy. I do hold him higher than Jefferson right now. I'm not saying that Jefferson is so far below him because I think that it is really close. I don't know that you can go wrong either way, like you said. But to me, if I had the choice, one or the other, I agree. I would take Amon-Ra. As far as Sam Laporta goes, yeah, that's your guy. I think that this is going to be a year, though, that obviously he is held as the number one tight end. And so I think a lot of people are going to overdraft on him. And I think that that's sort of the danger of picking a Sam Laporta. You're going to see a lot of guys that are going to take him in the second round into the very top end of the third round. I think that, there's a guy, Travis Kelce, who's going to be sitting there, right after that. And it's a guy who honestly, I look at the redraft the same sort of way that I look at dynasty values. And so if a guy starts to slip a little bit on there, you're sort of getting a discount on a Travis Kelce, a guy who was going in first rounds, last year, and now all of a sudden slipping to the third round, which is where I think a lot of the drafts will have him. I think I'd honestly be more comfortable picking Travis Kelce in the third round than Sam Laporta in the middle of the second round. I just think that the amount of value that's going to be there for you in the second round, I don't know that I can pass that up and take a tight end. I do get the upside, and I do understand Sam Laporta is totally elite right now. I just, part of me holds my breath that it's not a 1 year thing and everybody gets really excited about it. The other part of me says, okay, let's take the value-based drafting here and that approach. And that's sort of why I would shy away from it a touch. Because, again, there's going to be a lot of guys who are hyped up about Sam Laporta, way more than even you were, Zach. And so, which is not, obviously. I just think that, it is something to caution yourself about. As far as Gibbs goes and Montgomery goes, listen, a running back 1, running back 2 for me, right there, stuck in the middle of the tier, I would say. Jahmyr Gibbs is probably, just outside the top 5, but he's probably the next, running back, if not, the one below that even. He's probably number 6 for me, though, I would say. Monty's probably stuck right there, 15, 16 range as far as the running back rankings go. And I think that obviously you said it, like he's going to get his touchdowns. I'm excited to be able to keep him on my dynasty team this year because I think that he will get touchdowns. And, whether I'm sticking him in as a flex option or a running back 2 option, I don't know that you can really go wrong with a guy who gets that. I also do believe that there will be games like we saw last year where David Montgomery just gets 20 carries because he's just absolutely wearing down that defense. And I think the break the kneecaps Dan Campbell mentality, sort of is going to continue here. And so if Monty can wear down those defenses by just running through them, because that's sort of how they used last year, and then they hit over the top with Amon-Ra on those play actions, I think that formula sort of worked for them in a bunch of games last year. And so I think they'll be able to continue to do that when, a lot of teams think they're going to zig to Gibbs, they'll zag with Montgomery. As far as Goff goes, super flex option for me. He's right there on the precipice of a low end, quarterback 1, say. And yeah, he's a solid option. You can wait on him. Very solid guy to get as your quarterback 2 in drafts. And, Zach, we talk all the time in redraft about getting a solid quarterback 2, a solid backup there right in the middle of your draft. And don't wait too late on those guys. Try to get there as the first or second or third team to draft back quarterback because, once those guys start to dwindle out, you're left with the Daniel Joneses of the world. And I just think that, you don't really want to be left out on that. So I always like having 2 solid quarterbacks. Even if I get a guy like Pat Mahomes, that's great. Quarterbacks get hurt all the time, and that ends fantasy season. And so to be able to have a solid option like a Jared Goff, highly recommend it because there is the opportunity that he does become a top 10 quarterback this year. Listen, we saw it with Kirk Cousins all the time. That's the example I can point to. Kirk Cousins, every year, forgotten. Didn't matter. He still proved himself as a top 6 finisher in pretty much every season he played. And so, yeah, that's my recommendation there.
Yeah, 100%, Brett. I think the reason even Goff is ranked so low is because there are so many quarterbacks this year. Starters, of course, but I also mentioned the backups. Not even the backups, just a round, late group of starters into the backups. There's just so many guys there. I mean, a guy like Kirk Cousins that you just said, like we say, oh, he's going to this great offense in Atlanta, like consensus rankings has him at 16 in terms of quarterback. Like that's crazy low. There's a lot of guys there. Um, but it's something to really look out because you kind of pick out those guys who's better than the other in terms of that group. And I mean, a guy like Justin Herbert's even in there. Like that's a discussion for once we get to the AFC West. But crazy how many quarterbacks there are, backups there. Goff could really have an argument to be near the top of that group, just based on the weapons he has and the amount of points he's going to get from giving the ball to those weapons that out in space. Every single one of those guys is ridiculous. So the other thing quickly that stood out was what you said about the tight end in Laporta. I feel like late third round into fourth round is the perfect spot for a guy like Sam Laporta. It's also a really good spot for Travis Kelce. I don't think that either tight end really just goes above and beyond and should be picked this year in the second round or even early third round. Like it's not the year for that. And there's so many position players. I mean, Brett, we've gone through a ton of them already, running backs and wide receivers that you would take in a heartbeat over those two tight ends, even though those tight ends bring that great value and you kind of have an advantage versus somebody else's tight end. You could have a clear advantage as well at running back and wide receiver by picking correctly there. So definitely a thing to watch out for, and obviously some draft strategy there.
Yeah, and obviously we'll talk about that in a few weeks after we finish up. With our division previews, we like to, talk draft strategy and the approach, and we talk running back, wide receiver, and going that zero running back route, and whether you want one or the other. When should you take the quarterback? We'll break all of that down in a couple of weeks. But I think that with the surplus of tight ends, I'm sort of pushing tight end down a touch because I just think there's so much talent that's available, higher end. Zach, let's just quickly talk about the AFC North, because obviously our next episode, we will be focusing on them. And it's a year that obviously Baltimore still is, I think, the favorite. But obviously some changes around the division. Cincinnati, a lot of rumors about what potentially could happen at receiver, whether or not T. Higgins gets traded or not. Pittsburgh goes dual quarterbacks, and I think that's a big question mark, and I'm excited to actually talk of who you think ends the season, not who starts, but who ends the season as the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback. Any thought here just in general here on the AFC North?
There's a lot here, Brett, and obviously the top two things on my mind are Pittsburgh and the quarterback situation, obviously what that means for their weapons in that offense. But I'm going to focus just a little bit on Cincinnati, Brett, because obviously there's so much question mark there in terms of the T. Higgins contract situation and obviously losing Mixon and a lot of that. They bring in Zach Moss, like a big-time replacement. That's a guy to look out for in fantasy this year. So somebody that you don't hear a lot of his name, but obviously something to watch out for. But this offense in general, they missed Joe Burrow. They did desperately last season. And now they get him back, and there's a lot there. Although they lost a lot, there's a lot there. And if Joe Burrow stays healthy, I think this offense could go through the roof, which it's crazy because this offense right now, Brett, is under the radar. They are, because they're not getting the same press. They're not getting the same coverage because obviously last year didn't finish how they wanted to because Burrow wasn't there. I think they're ready to roll. I think this offense could go through the roof. There's names like Jermaine Burton that a lot of people are talking about right now. Like there is a lot there, and I expect a lot from Cincinnati this year.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the big name in the division that actually is intriguing to me is actually Derrick Henry. I think that, this is obviously the match made in heaven. We kind of saw it, months ago when we were talking about potential trade deadline targets and Derrick Henry potentially going to the Baltimore Ravens, and they were sort of missing that workhorse back. They finally go out and they get him in free agency. And, obviously he's not the Derrick Henry that he was 3 years ago. Just based on the injuries and the muscles and he sort of was slowing down, and then we saw this absolute tear to end last season. And so does he continue that? Can he stay healthy? I think that's the biggest question mark for me in the AFC North as far as the success of that team, especially the fact that they don't go out and bring Odell Beckham Jr. back. And so it's a little bit thin for me at receiver. Kind of looks like they're going to lean very, very heavily into the run.
Best division in football, Brett. I mean, it should be a good one next week.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really fun to break down. And I just think that there is a lot there. And listen, there's even some rookies, like we talked Roman Wilson and some of those guys as well that could potentially make an impact for May Burton, etc. So that'll do it for us today, though. So please subscribe to us on YouTube, podcast, and put the thumbs up. And in the words of Aaron Rodgers, the night is darkest before the dawn, and we shall rise yet again. We'll catch you next time on the Third Round Reversal Fantasy Football Podcast.